Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. Amina Okoye never imagined receiving a glittering envelope embossed with the corporate seal of Sterling Dynamics. As head of marketing for a rising tech startup, she prided herself on discretion, and on her clandestine relationship with CEO Malcolm Sterling. When her phone buzzed with the invite to his personal anniversary gala, she felt invincible. That night, she donned her most seductive gown, black silk hugging every curve, and rehearsed the perfect flirtatious smile. Arriving in a sleek black town car, Amina stepped onto the marble landing of the Sterling penthouse. A butler in crisp livery guided her through gilded corridors to the grand ballroom. A hush of excitement rippled through the crowd as she passed. Chauffeurs and socialites parted like a shimmering sea. "Who is that?" hissed one diplomat's wife. "Malcolm's mystery guest," replied another, her tone equal parts envy and intrigue. Champagne glasses tinkled. Soft jazz bobbed against soaring ceilings. She spotted Malcolm near a crystal chandelier, speaking with board members. He turned, his sapphire cufflinks catching the light, and offered her a private nod. Pride flared within her. Every glance toward her seemed laden with promise. She weaved through clusters of admirers until she reached him. "You look breathtaking," he murmured, his voice low. "Shall we dance?" They glided across the parquet floor, treading between opulent floral arrangements. Amina let him steer, her pulse hammering as his hand settled on the small of her back. "You have no idea what this evening means to me," he whispered in her ear, and she inhaled, intoxicated by the thrill. But as the clock edged toward midnight, an abrupt hush fell. The overhead music faded, replaced by the soft click of a remote. A massive gilt-framed screen descended in the hallway outside the study. Curious, Amina followed Malcolm through an arched doorway into the dimly lit hall. The crowd gathered around the screen like moths to flame. When the lights dimmed further, the screen flickered to life with a single image. Malcolm, hand in hand with his elegant wife, Isabelle, radiant in ivory satin. Gasps cut through the air. Amina's heart lurched. The invitation that felt like an honor now felt like bait. Rumors of the other woman shriveled in her ears as she realized she had been paraded for Isabelle's amusement. An unwitting star in a humiliating play. Malcolm's grip on her elbow tightened until her breath caught. He spared her a look that held apology and calculation. In that moment, Amina understood the invitation's true purpose: to expose her, to draw her into a trap she could not escape. The cold weight of betrayal dropped through her chest. She glanced around, searching for allies among the whispering guests, but found only pity and veiled amusement. The chapter closes on Amina's trembling reflection in the screen's polished frame, cheeks aflame as she wonders. Had she become the pawn in a revenge far darker and more elaborate than she could have ever imagined? Her world had just begun to unravel. A week after the gala, Amina's phone pinged with a terse text: "Meet me at the office at dawn." Her heart pounded as she slipped from her apartment into the pre-dawn chill. She navigated silent streets in dagger-sharp heels, every echo sharp against the crackling air. Sterling Dynamics loomed before her, its glass facade reflecting the faint glow of street lamps. Inside, the marble lobby lay deserted, and she passed through security with the same ID badge that hours earlier had granted her confident entry. In the hushed silence, she ascended to the top floor. Her stilettos clicked down the hallway as she approached the dimly lit boardroom. The door stood ajar. She paused, smoothing her skirt, and pushed it open. Malcolm sat behind his polished oak desk, half his face illuminated by a single desk lamp. He rose, offering a curt nod. "Thank you for coming," he murmured, voice low. Amina closed the door and exhaled. "You said this would be urgent." He gestured to the conference table. A slender envelope lay atop a stack of financial reports. It bore a familiar delicate script: Isabelle. Amina felt a chill. She sank into a chair, fingertips brushing its seal. "What is this?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "I wanted to talk in private before you leave town." His eyes flicked to the window where dawn's first light stained the horizon. "I have responsibilities to my family." She folded her arms. "Responsibilities?" Her voice trembled. "You invited me here as if I mattered." He exhaled and slid out of his chair. "I do care," he said, then paused. "But my wife," he trailed off, then cleared his throat. "I'm going on a sanctioned trip to our London office today. I won't be reachable." He handed her the envelope. "Read it. And don't contact me until I return." Amina's pulse thundered. She opened the envelope, revealing a single photograph. Malcolm and Isabelle entwined at a sunlit terrace, smiling with an intimacy that cut deeper than any weapon. Beneath it, a note: "Enjoy these memories, I've archived the rest." Her breath caught. "Is this a joke?" Malcolm shook his head. "I'm sorry." He turned away. "It's safer this way." Amina backed out, clutching the photograph like evidence. She fled through the lobby into the morning air, its cold sting biting her face. She barely noticed the security guard's unwavering stare, or the low hum of security cameras. When she crossed the plaza, a tinted car rolled by. In its window her reflection shimmered, eyes wild, heart raw. For a fleeting moment she saw another face, Isabelle's smooth, composed features projected over her own. It was a silent judgment, a grim promise. And Amina understood that her fate, and her reputation, were no longer her own, truly. Amina told herself it was love. She replayed Malcolm's promises: "You're everything I've ever wanted." But late nights in opulent hotel suites, whispered confidences and decadent dinners had cost more than she realized. Her corporate reputation withered as colleagues noticed her frequent absences. Conversations once polite turned cold. "Where's Amina?" they murmured. "She's gone AWOL." Rumors of a takeover whispered in hushed tones. One afternoon she returned to her desk to find her computer locked. The usual desktop icons were gone, replaced by a single file blinking in red: exposure.pdf. Her hands shook as she clicked it open. The screen filled with intimate images of herself and Malcolm, time-stamped at Sterling's penthouse. Each snapshot was annotated in bold red ink. Dates, locations, and even the brand of champagne they'd shared. She felt bile rise in her throat. The door behind her clicked. She spun to see her assistant, Lillian, peering over her shoulder. "Are you okay?" Lillian's voice quivered. I just came to check on you." Amina snapped her laptop shut. "Go back to work, please," she managed, though her voice cracked. Alone again, Amina sank into her chair. She pressed her temples, trying to steady her racing thoughts. This was no simple affair. Isabelle had weaponized her desire against her. Every stolen kiss, every whispered promise now stalked her like ghosts. She remembered Malcolm's laughter in his study, the way he called her, "my star." That laughter echoed hollowly now. She dialed Malcolm's number. The call rang endlessly before cutting to voicemail. "Malcolm, it's me. We need to talk." Her trembling thumb hovered over the hang-up button, but she left the message. Seconds later, his assistant Simone answered. "He's away on business until next Tuesday," Simone said with practiced detachment. "Please don't contact him again." Amina's vision blurred. She pressed her palms into her eyes, tasting tears. Her apartment felt like a gilded cage she no longer revered. She paced the length of the living room, furniture shadows flickering under the streetlights slanting through the blinds. Hours later, on her plush couch, she stared at her phone, willing a message from him, a shred of reassurance. Instead, the inbox stayed empty. Alone in the darkness, she realized her affair had been a Faustian bargain. She had traded her dignity for a fleeting taste of power and attention. Guilt and fear gnawed at her. Dawn's first light filtered through her blinds and she rose unsteadily. She dressed in a crisp blouse and pencil skirt, armor for the confrontation she knew she had to make. She braced herself for the worst possible outcome, determined. She stepped outside into the soft glow of morning, her reflection in the elevator's glass doors showing eyes rimmed red with exhaustion. By sunrise, she vowed she would confront Malcolm in his office and demand answers. The world would know the truth of her betrayal, his complicity, and Isabelle's merciless vengeance. And she prayed she would still have a future when it was done. In the boardroom's fluorescent glare, Sterling Dynamics leadership gathered for the quarterly review. Amina walked in with practiced confidence, though a tremor ran under her heartbeat. Around the long mahogany table sat the CFO, heads of department, and several external auditors. She offered polite nods, her heels clicking across the polished floor. Before she could settle, the CFO, Mr. Dawson, leaned across to her. "Watch your step today," he whispered, voice low and urgent. Amina's throat tightened. She sat at her designated chair, feeling every eye on her. Malcolm flicked on the projector remote. Instead of sales graphs, the screen displayed a candid photograph. Amina and Malcolm in a hotel lobby, captured mid-embrace. The room exhaled in shocked gasps. "Is this?" the CFO stammered, wincing at his own discomfort. Amina's cheeks burned as silence descended. Whispers of scandal rippled through the executives. On the wall behind her, Isabelle stepped into view, calm and composed. her arm entwined with Malcolm's as he stood beside her on the display. The image cut deeper than any accusation. Malcolm cleared his throat, regaining control. "This meeting will proceed on a different agenda," he announced, voice measured. "Isabelle will oversee internal investigations into conduct." Isabelle's gaze swept over the boardroom, landing on Amina like a verdict. Each click of her heels as she approached sounded like reprimand. The executives exchanged uneasy glances. The CFO glanced at his notes, his hand trembling. Amina clenched her pen, its polished surface cool against her palm. Malcolm motioned for everyone else to leave. Chairs scraped, leather stirred. Soon, only Amina and Malcolm remained. He sat behind the desk, drained. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, gaze averted. "I did what I had to." His admission sounded like betrayal. Amina closed her eyes, recalling the warmth of his earlier words. Now those words felt hollow. "You sacrificed me," she whispered, voice tight. Malcolm looked up, regret etched across his features. "I sacrificed our affair to save everything else." She swallowed the lump in her throat, too furious to speak or move. He rose, pushing back his chair. "There's no going back." His apology floated in the cavernous room. He opened the door, letting in murmurings from the corridor. Alone under the unforgiving spotlights, Amina realized she stood exposed, not just in body but in reputation. The chairs and screens seemed to close around her, sealing her fate. She braced herself, chest tight. The whispers outside grew louder, echoing off the walls. Mistress, liability, conflict of interest. Each step toward the door felt like trudging through shame. The boardroom, once her domain, had become a tribunal. She paused, hand on the doorknob, and glanced once more at the empty table. Her reflection in the darkened projector screen stared back. Cheeks flushed, shoulders squared, and eyes burning with both humiliation and defiance. By Monday, Sterling Dynamics corridors buzzed with speculation. Amina's name trended in murmured conversations behind closed doors. Anonymous emails circulated juicy details of her liaison with the CEO. Screenshots of scandalous gossip forums popped up on her phone at every turn. In hushed tones beside her cubicle, colleagues wondered aloud, "What will HR do? And is she still employed?" Before she could brace herself, she received a calendar invite flagged as urgent from Human Resources. Inside a sterile office painted in muted gray, she faced Mr. Dawson and two senior compliance officers. Their faces were sympathetic but impassive, like judges delivering a verdict. A laminated policy booklet lay on the desk between them. Amina closed the gap between her and the table, forcing a steady voice. "I'd like to explain." "It's not a discussion," Dawson interrupted gently. "We've determined your conduct violates our code of conduct." He slid a disciplinary notice across the desk. "You're immediately suspended pending review." The words felt like a guillotine blade across her career. She clutched the edge of the desk, nails digging into her palms. "This is unfair," she protested. "I haven't harmed the company." Dawson's pitying eyes never met hers. "Your actions have compromised our integrity. We must maintain trust." He tapped the notice with a steel pen. "You will receive your final paycheck tomorrow. For now, please collect personal items and exit the premises." Amina nodded numbly, voice hollow. Outside the glass office, colleagues shot her pitying glances, and pointed. She fled down the hallway, every step echoing against cold tile. On the lobby floor, the security guard averted his eyes. Cabs honked outside, indifferent to her downfall. At home, she stood before the mirror, her reflection a stranger. She tore at her hair, tears trailing down her cheeks. The power she once wielded now felt like a drunken dream. Late that evening, her phone buzzed relentlessly. Notifications popped from social media apps. Tasteful blogs and gossip sites recounted her fall from grace. Headlines blared, "Mistress exposed," NCO's scandalous secret. She scrolled numbly, each story like a fresh wound. Snarky memes circulated on Twitter, and smug commentary thrived on LinkedIn. Even former friends shared the links, adding their own snark. A private message pinged on her phone, Malcolm's number. "I'm sorry. I can't help you." She dropped the phone. It hit the hardwood with a hollow thud. She collapsed against the wall, trembling as strangers' comments scrolled on her screen. She got what she deserved. Even her alumni group chat erupted with calls for condemnation. She questioned how to stem this wave of mockery. Alone in the dark, she realized the campaign had been launched by Isabelle. Strategic, brutal, impossible to counter. The whispers that had once flattered her now consumed her. Night turned to dawn, and Amina curled onto her bed, clutching the disciplinary letter like a talisman of her disgrace. Her last coherent thought before sleep claimed her was, "Why did I ever think I could win?" A week into her suspension, Amina's phone buzzed with a terse notification. Office. Midnight. Her pulse thundered as she considered ignoring it, but something in the terse phrasing, the insistence of formality, compelled her. She arrived outside the Sterling Dynamics Tower at 11:45 p.m., the streets deserted except for distant sirens. The lobby lights glowed amber. The security guard nodded at her without recognition and swiped her ID. She rode the elevator to the top floor, nerves fraying with every ding. The corridor was dark, the emergency lights casting long shadows on the polished marble. At the CEO's suite door, she paused to steel herself, then knocked once. A soft click released the lock. She pushed inside. The suite was bathed in flickering projector light. A montage of her most private moments with Malcolm played on the opposite wall. Stolen kisses on a velvet chaise, whispered laughter by candlelight, the curve of her collarbone in close-up. The images moved in slow motion, each frame annotated with timestamps and locations. Her stomach lurched. "Come in," Malcolm's voice drifted from the shadows. He stood by his desk, face half hidden in darkness. "Sit," he ordered, gesturing to a leather chair. His tone held no warmth. She perched on the edge, eyes glued to the screen. "What is this?" she whispered. Malcolm's lips curled in a weary smile. "Consider it the final performance." He stepped forward, pressing a button. The montage froze on a frame of her in Malcolm's arms. "These files are in my hands," he continued. "And Isabelle's." He tapped the desk, producing a contract and pen. "Sign this public apology, or I release everything to the press." Amina's breath caught. "You can't seriously expect me?" He raised a hand. "You don't have a choice. Think of your career, your reputation, even your freedom." His gaze hardened. "At sunrise, I leave for London. You'll have 12 hours to decide." She stared at him, fury and despair warring within. "You set this up." Her voice trembled. "You wanted me here." He sighed, stepping back into the gloom. "It's necessary. For all our sakes." He locked eyes with her. "Sign." The projector clicked off. Darkness swallowed her. She sat frozen, heart pounding. Minutes dragged. The contract lay on the desk. A scripted apology, admission of misconduct, and waiver of all legal claims. She thought of her dwindling savings, the HR letter, the social media carnage. She thought of her dignity shattered on public display. With shaking fingers, she reached for the pen. She pictured herself as a marionette, every string in rival hands. She inhaled, voice small. I need time." He tilted his head. "You have until dawn. After that, everything goes live." She rose unsteadily. "This isn't over." He didn't respond. Amina turned and fled, the suite door clicking shut behind her. In the dark corridor, her reflection in a bronze plaque loomed hollow-eyed. Behind her, the suite lights blinked out, leaving her alone with the night and the desperate choice before her. At dawn, Amina awoke in her bare apartment to the shrill ring of notifications. Her suspended social media feeds erupted overnight with teaser clips, short, tantalizing snippets from Isabelle's montage. Each clip was carefully edited to suggest more scandal. A silhouette in lingerie, a whispered promise, a stray hand on Malcolm's thigh, never the full context but enough to enthrall. Comments poured in, "Show us more." "She deserves it." "Where's the rest?" Even professional networks buzzed, marketing guru turned tabloid fodder. Screenshots of headlines flashed, "Exclusive, CEO's mistress exposed." The world had turned into an audience clamoring for her humiliation. Amina scrolled numbly, tears blurring the screen. She tried posting a heartfelt denial on her suspended LinkedIn, but it vanished into a sea of retweets and mocking memes. Even old classmates piled on, "Sorry, but that's what happens when you play with fire." She felt suffocated by the collective voyeurism. Desperate, she reached out to a boutique PR consultant. Her proposal, a controlled interview, a damage control strategy, met a prohibitive fee. "Your case isn't worth it," the consultant admitted. "The public has made up its mind." Penniless after weeks without pay, Amina realized her options evaporated. As she sat in a dusty cafe nursing black coffee, she watched Sterling Dynamics stock ticker dip on her tablet. Investors traded shares on rumor and scandal, and the company wavered. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if Malcolm's remnants of loyalty might rescue her. But his absence spelled abandonment. A news alert blinked across her screen. "Tonight, live-streamed apology, mistress to confess?" Panic surged. This was Isabelle's next move, a live spectacle designed to humiliate her further. Amina slammed the tablet down. She pressed her palms to her temples, mind racing. A fellow patron nudged her. "You shouldn't read that stuff," he offered, voice soft. Amina shook her head. "I have to know." She stormed out, heart pounding, and hurried back to her apartment. The walls felt like a cage closing in. She paced, clutching her phone, trying to craft a statement, any statement that could stem the tide. But each time she tried, the weight of public opinion crushed her resolve. By evening, her phone buzzed incessantly. Her borrowed outfit for the live stream hung on her door, a humiliating costume for her forced confession. She stared at it, stomach churning. 12 hours remained. She realized with cold clarity that her only leverage was the truth, and Isabelle controlled even that. Amina sank onto her bed, head in hands. The world had turned her into a spectacle. As the cafe patron had said, she shouldn't look, but she couldn't look away. And in that tear-streaked moment she vowed, whatever happened tonight, she would reclaim her voice. Locked in shame and uncertainty, Amina wrestled with the impending live stream. At midnight, a tentative knock sounded at her door. She flinched, heart banging, then opened it to find Tund, her junior marketer and once her bright protégé, standing in the hallway clutching a USB drive. "Tund," she whispered. "What are you doing here?" His posture was tense, eyes darting. I've uncovered something." He held out the drive. "This proves the files weren't from our server. They came from Isabelle's IP." She stared at him, disbelief warring with hope. "How did you?" "I've been reversing server logs," he said. "They accessed confidential files under your credentials. Images, emails, everything. I wasn't going to say anything until I knew for sure." Amina's pulse quickened. "This could clear my name." Tund nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. "But be careful. I almost got caught pulling the logs." They slipped inside her apartment and booted her laptop. Tund plugged in the drive, opening a folder titled Proof. Inside were metadata files showing timestamps, IP addresses, and logs of file transfers. Each entry traced back to an address registered under Isabelle Sterling's trust. Amina sank into a chair, mind racing. This is enormous. She thought of the disciplinary notice, the social media storm, the forced apology looming. With this, I can expose Isabelle. Tund laced his fingers together. There's a catch. Isabelle's team monitors network traffic closely. If you try to leak this publicly, they'll track it back to you, and discredit you further. Amina pressed her palms to her eyes. Betrayal had stalked her at every turn, now even from allies. She looked at Tund. But we can use it to negotiate. I can go back to Malcolm. Tund's face shadowed. Malcolm resigned this morning. He took the fall. Amina's heart lurched. He resigned? To protect me? Tund swallowed. The board accepted his resignation. They said his name alone is too toxic now. She stared at the logs. She could confront Isabelle directly, but would that help? Or simply provoke another humiliation ritual? The weight of decision pressed down. Expose the truth and risk everything, or negotiate quietly and hope for a reprieve. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. CEO resignation sparks investor panic. She read the headline, stomach twisting. Malcolm had vanished from the spotlight entirely. Without him, she had no protector. She closed the USB folder. Tund, thank you. Truly. She paused. But this isn't enough yet. We need leverage, something public. A letter, a press conference. Tund shook his head. Too risky. You need a plan. Amina nodded, mind sharpening. All right. We plan carefully. No missteps. Isabelle thinks she holds all the cards. It's time she learned otherwise. Isabelle Sterling moved through her days with ghostly precision. Behind the charitable veneer of her newly founded nonprofit, she orchestrated a covert investigation. Each morning she visited community centers, publicly promoting women's empowerment. Privately, she recruited insiders from Sterling Dynamics who fed her data. Amina's evidence lay dormant on Tund's drive, hidden beneath layers of encryption. Meanwhile, Isabelle's strategy advanced. She arranged a primetime televised interview on corporate integrity today, filmed in the very Sterling penthouse where Amina and Malcolm once entwined. The network billed it as The CEO's Wife Speaks on Ethics. Invitations flew to every major outlet, and to Amina, you are welcome to attend as a guest. The suggestion dripped with condescension. Amina read the email in her sparsely furnished living room, the glow of her laptop illuminating her gaunt face. A single line stood out, your insight could enrich the conversation. Inside she had, in spades, but the invitation felt like bait. That evening she arrived at the studio, dressed in a modest navy suit. The production crew guided her to the green room, where she stood between a makeup artist and a PR liaison. Cameras' lights gleamed through the windows. Her throat tightened. Isabelle appeared on set first, radiant in cream silk. She delivered her opening remarks with serene confidence, citing her personal journey from grief to philanthropy. The host nodded, eyes glued to her poised figure. When it was Amina's turn, the host gestured her on stage. She stepped into harsh spotlights, heart hammering. The audience applauded politely. Isabelle watched from a monitor, lips curved in a polite smile. The host's first question was a thinly veiled challenge. Amina, you were once at the center of a scandal here at Sterling Dynamics. How do you respond to critics who say you breached trust? Amina inhaled. The camera's red light felt like an interrogation lamp. She leveled her gaze at the host. I made mistakes, she began, voice steady despite the tremor inside. But I've learned from them. My goal now is to ensure others aren't exploited or manipulated. The audience murmured. Isabelle's expression softened ever so slightly. The host leaned in. There are reports you possess evidence that could implicate the company's leadership. Will you share it? Amina paused, glancing toward the monitor where Isabelle watched. She recalled Tun's warnings. I have information, she said carefully. But it must be handled responsibly. Public spectacle harms everyone involved. The host raised an eyebrow. The audience leaned forward. Isabelle's smile tightened. The next question would decide the narrative. 2 hours before the studio's cameras rolled, Amina's phone buzzed with an unexpected text from an unrecognized number. Trust no one. The camera will lie. Beneath it was a link labeled Security Feed. Her pulse spiked as she tapped it. A live feed showed her apartment's foyer, a dark-suited figure, unmistakably Isabelle's driver, loading boxes into a black van. Panic flared. Her personal files, mementos of her children, Tun's drive, all vulnerable. She backed away, mind racing. If those boxes reached Isabelle's hands, proof of her investigation would vanish. She dashed to her cab, nearly tripping on the doorstep. The driver navigated through slick streets to her building, where she confronted the security guard. He shrugged. No one's authorized this. His disinterested tone felt like betrayal. She returned to her flat, keys jangling. Inside, drawers stood ajar, her laptop and most belongings gone. She felt an icy dread. Isabelle had invaded her sanctuary. With minutes to spare before the interview, she had two choices: cancel and expose herself to professional ruin, or proceed and keep her adversary guessing. She scooped up the lone item left on her desk, her old notebook containing personal journal entries, and stuffed it into her bag. At the studio, makeup artists fussed over her hair. She sat under harsh lights, mind a whirlwind. She felt hollow without her papers, but adrenaline sharpened her resolve. A stagehand whispered, "They're ready when you are." She gave a tight nod. As she stood, she received one final message: smile. They know you're scared. The words stung. She squared her shoulders, stepping onto the brightly lit set. The host greeted her with practiced warmth. Isabelle sat opposite, serene. The audience hushed. Cameras rolled. Amina inhaled, channeling fear into focus. Under the harsh glare of studio lights, Amina Okoye felt utterly exposed. She had prepared for questions about the scandal at Sterling Dynamics, but not for personal attacks on her private life. The host leaned forward from behind the desk, his eyes sharp. Amina, rumors say you abandoned a husband and child years ago to advance your career. Can you address these claims? The audience hushed. Amina's heart thundered. She took a steadying breath. I understand why people are curious, she began, her voice firm despite the tremor inside. Yes, I separated from my husband. It was a painful choice during a difficult period for my family. She paused, choosing honesty over evasion. But I did not abandon my child. My son is safe with his father, who is a devoted parent. A ripple ran through the audience. The host nodded. There are photographs circulating, of a little boy with another woman. How do you explain that? Heat flushed Amina's face. She swallowed, recalling the countless nights she had wept in silence. The photographs show my son visiting his grandmother after a custody arrangement. It was misinterpreted. She forced a calm smile. My actions were driven by circumstances, not ambition at his expense. A voice from the crowd called out, So you admit to deceit? Another reporter asked, What about your colleagues who whispered that your focus on work cost you your family? Amina hinged on truth. I made mistakes in balancing career and motherhood. But I have always loved my son, and I have worked to be both a provider and a caring parent. She met the camera's red light. My journey has taught me resilience. Offstage, Isabelle watched via monitor. Her composed facade betrayed nothing. Malcolm's resigned silhouette flickered on screen beside her. He had agreed to this ambush. The host pressed on. Is there any direct evidence you were mistreated at Sterling Dynamics beyond the affair allegation? Amina's gaze traced the corners of the set. Her gloved heart ached. I was targeted in a campaign to destroy my reputation, she said, voice gaining strength. I believe behind it was someone who felt threatened by my potential. I stand here seeking accountability. Polite applause rippled. The interview continued, alternating between probing questions and moments of empathy as Amina recounted the cost of her mistakes. When the segment ended, the host offered a final remark. Thank you for your candor. We wish you well. As she exited the stage, tears threatened, but she kept her head high. Backstage, the makeup artist asked, Are you okay? Amina managed a tight nod. In the green room, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror, eyes red, chin lifted. She realized her double life had been laid bare, but in that vulnerability she found new credibility. As she walked away from the bright lights, she felt a sliver of control returning. This was not the end. It was a new beginning. Her story was no longer defined by betrayal. Weeks after the televised interview, news outlets spun the narrative of redemption. Sterling Dynamics announced an annual charity gala in Amina's honor as Philanthropist of the Year. Though no longer employed, she received an invitation. Friends urged her to decline, but Amina saw a chance to reclaim her story, so she accepted. Walking up the steps, Amina recalled the first gala she had ever attended with Malcolm. The memory of their first dance, joyful, intimate, hurt like a bruise. Now those memories felt like open wounds. On the night of the gala, the grand ballroom of the Royal Crescent Hotel dazzled with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Patrons in tuxedos and evening gowns moved through throngs of paparazzi and socialites. Amina arrived in a modest, dark emerald dress designed to draw eyes toward her resilience. She felt the lens of cameras but held her head high. Tables draped in ivory linen displayed gourmet hors d'oeuvres, and servers carried trays of champagne. The philanthropic cause, education for underprivileged youth, tugged at her heart. She greeted acquaintances with polite nods, feeling both warmth and distance. The program began with a speech by Isabelle Sterling. Her heels clicked on stage as she described her journey from grief to leadership. Guests applauded politely before a video montage celebrated Sterling Dynamics' charitable work. Amina watched, cheeks flushed by the spotlights. Suddenly the lights dimmed and the screens flickered. The montage halted on a grainy clip of Amina's most humiliating moments. Backstage at the TV studio, the forced apology and the whispered jabs from tabloids. The audience gasped. Isabelle's voice declared, Tonight, forgiveness transforms shame into strength. A large screen behind the stage revealed Amina and Isabelle standing side by side. Isabelle handed her a bouquet of white lilies as photographers captured the forgiveness photo. Applause rippled through the crowd, pity and sensationalism mingling. Amina forced a smile as she accepted the flowers. Reporters shouted questions. How do you feel? Do you really forgive her? She managed a nod. I believe in second chances, she said softly. Her words tasted like ashes. After the photo op, she slipped to a balcony overlooking the skyline. The cool air brushed her face. She realized that each photograph, each whispered rumor, had stripped away layers of her identity until only fear remained. But as the night air filled her lungs, she knew that fear would not define her future. Returning inside, she found Malcolm waiting in the shadows. His eyes held regret. I'm sorry, he said quietly. She looked at him, bouquet heavy in her arms. They staged this, she said. They turned my pain into a show. He nodded. They needed a happy ending, he murmured. Amina stared at the crowd through the curtain. Their faces shone with expectation. She realized she had to choose, remain a celebrated victim or write her own chapter. She dropped the bouquet and stepped back into the limelight, determined to forge her own path. Her journey was far from over. In the days following the gala, Amina's inbox delivered regrets from potential employers. Recruiters cited reputation risk and public scrutiny. Each rejection stung more than the last. She scrolled through job boards until her eyes burned from exhaustion. Freelance editing gigs paid little. Waitressing shifts left her drained. She yearned for the confidence she once possessed. One afternoon she stormed into Nova Strategies, a small PR agency she admired. The receptionist offered sympathetic eyes as Amina demanded they clear her name. She presented tons server logs and messages proving sabotage. But the agency's lead consultant shook her head. "It's too risky," she said gently. Amina clenched her fists, realizing that even those who claimed to fight for truth feared her case's exposure. Outside, rain began to fall. She stood under a narrow awning, drenched despite her umbrella. The city lights shone through the mist, turning puddles into mirrors. She thought of Malcolm's promises and Isabelle's calculated vengeance. That night, in her cramped apartment, Amina sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by crumpled paper. She reread Tun's USB drive contents. The truth was there, but she lacked a platform to reveal it. She wanted to scream, to dismantle Isabelle's facade, but no one seemed willing to listen. She considered leaving the city, finding another path. But a spark refused to die inside her. She grabbed her journal and wrote, "I am more than this scandal. I will rise." Her pen danced across the page, igniting a fragile resolve. Weeks passed and winter's chill set in. Christmas lights lined shop windows, mocking her isolation. She bought a single candle, lighting it each evening as a symbol of hope. Each night, the flame flickered like a heartbeat, a reminder she was still alive. Then one morning she discovered a plain white envelope under her door. No return address. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a simple invitation: City Hall. Tomorrow at dawn. Come alone if you want answers. Her breath caught. Who would summon her? Isabelle? Malcolm? A trap? She stared at the envelope's unadorned surface, heart racing. The paper felt heavier than any contract. She reached for her phone, tempted to delete the message. But something about the penmanship felt familiar, so deliberate, so controlled. She realized this could be her chance to confront the architect of her ruin. As dawn approached, she dressed in a tailored coat and scarf. Fear knotted in her stomach, but her spine was straight. She stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the city still asleep. A lone bench awaited under City Hall's portico, its pillars rising like sentinels. Amina approached, envelope clenched in her gloved hand. The world felt poised on the brink. Her next move could save her or destroy her again. The chapter closes as she sits on the bench, still questioning whether she has the courage to face whatever awaits. At dawn, Amina approached City Hall's granite steps, envelope still clutched in her hand. The courtyard lay empty under a slate-gray sky. She drew a steadying breath and ascended toward the entrance's grand portico. A single bench sat beneath towering stone pillars. She set down the envelope and sat, waiting. Moments later, a soft footstep echoed. A figure approached, a woman in a cream-colored coat, hair styled into a sleek bob. It was Isabelle Sterling. Amina's heart hammered. She rose, the envelope slipping from her fingers. Isabelle offered a small porcelain cup of coffee, steam curling upward. "Black, no sugar," she said, voice calm. She extended the cup. Amina hesitated, then took it. The warmth seeped into her palms. Neither spoke for a long minute. The hush of the city felt distant. Finally, Isabelle broke the silence. "You deserve the truth." She slid a manila folder across the bench. Amina picked it up, her name printed on the tab. Inside lay pages of the divorce petition. Legal jargon merged with damning narrative, irreconcilable differences, emotional affair, breach of marital trust. A sample transcript of Amina's interview appeared, with commentary labeling her manipulative and unreliable. Her gaze flicked to Isabelle's composed face. "She filed this," Isabelle said softly. "To save face. To protect our family." Amina's throat constricted. "So you summoned me to serve me papers?" she asked, voice tight. Isabelle nodded. "And to offer you a choice." She produced a pen from her coat pocket. "Sign here," Isabelle instructed, sliding the pen across the folder. The dotted line glowed with dreadful promise. Amina stared at the line. Signing meant accepting his role as aggrieved husband and social elite. His public persona intact. Refusing risked igniting a ferocious legal battle, ensuring her permanent scandal. Wind gusted across the courtyard, rustling papers. A pea-gray pigeon cooed in the belfry above. Amina's hand trembled. She thought of Malcolm's half-apology, Tun's loyalty, the truth on Tun's drive. She tasted bitter coffee on her tongue. Her mind raced. Was this Isabelle's final blow? A public divorce filing would cement her as the villain. She closed her eyes. Every humiliation, every forced apology, every humiliating photo replayed in her memory. Her mind screamed justice. Fear whispered resignation always. Memories of her son surfaced. His laughter, his small hand in hers at the park. She realized that signing would sever ties to that life permanently. She exhaled slowly. The coffee's warmth had faded, but her resolve flickered to life. Isabelle lowered her gaze. "I can file tomorrow morning," she said. "Or you can sign now and quietly disappear." Her words hung between them like an accusation. Amina's teeth clenched. She weighed the cost of public war against silent compliance. The petition lay before her, a crossroads of survival and surrender. Morning light streamed through her curtains as Amina awoke to her phone buzzing relentlessly. Headlines blared: CO files for divorce, cites irretrievable breakdown, and emotional affair. Mistress exposed, Sterling scandal deepens. She felt the bed tilt beneath her. Messages flooded in from family and former friends. Some offering sympathy, most demanding explanations. She typed a response to her aunt. "I'm okay. It's complicated." But doubt gnawed at her stomach. She showered, avoiding her reflection. The steam blurred the mirror, but she could imagine the hollow-eyed woman staring back. At her computer, she drafted a statement on her suspended professional blog, her only public voice. Fingertips hovered over the keys before she wrote, "I never intended harm. My story has been manipulated." She hesitated, then hit post. Seconds later, notification icons exploded. Retweets, comments, mocking gifs. Her explanation vanished under a torrent of memes and branded hashtags mocking her as celeb scandal girl. Tears blurred her vision as she scrolled through replies, "Tell us the full story," and "Gold digger alert." Worse, even Malcolm's PR team distanced itself. His new statement called the divorce a deeply personal matter. He offered no support. She realized he had severed ties completely. Her phone chirped again, an automated call from her bank. Overdraft warning. Weeks without income had drained her savings. She shut the laptop and sank onto her couch, heart pounding. Memories of her career achievements felt like cruel jokes. She stood and paced. Each step echoed across the empty room. The walls seemed to close in. She felt every breath shallow, each heartbeat echoing doubt and resolve alike. Her apartment echoed with absent warmth and fear. She ripped the divorce petition she had considered signing and flung it into the trash, an act of defiance if nothing else. But the act felt hollow. A knock at the door startled her. It was Tund, clutching a thick envelope. "I tried reaching you," he said, voice low. He slid a court summons onto her coffee table. "You've been named in a defamation suit." She stared in disbelief. He continued, "The suit demands retraction of your statement, damages, and an apology." Her knees buckled. The world had turned against her again. She sank to the floor, leaning back against the sofa, staring at the ceiling. In that moment, a fierce resolve ignited. She wouldn't let every blow knock her down. She stood and retrieved Tund's USB drive. It contained evidence of Isabelle's sabotage. She placed it on the table next to the summons. Her chest heaved. She could fight, I can fight, she thought. She would expose the truth on her own terms. She would rebuild her life from the ashes of humiliation. The phone dinged. Another headline flashed, "Mistress sues for defamation." Amina picked up the summons and the drive, clipping them into a folder. She drew in a deep breath, chin lifting. Weeks slipped by in a haze of regret. Amina Okoye had exchanged penthouse glamour for a single room above a bustling cafe. The bed was a thin mattress, the only furniture, a rickety chair. Each morning she donned a faded blazer, once part of her professional wardrobe, and headed downstairs to wash dishes for a meager wage. The cafe's din of clattering cups and steaming milk reminded her of boardroom tumult. Both left her drained. One evening, as she scrubbed a stack of plates, the proprietor's son, Kemi, paused. "Hey, aren't you?" His voice trailed off, eyes widening. 2 weeks earlier, he'd overheard cafe patrons whispering, "She's the former marketing star at Sterling Dynamics." Now Kemi confronted her quietly. "They're still talking about you." Amina managed a weak smile. "I'm fine," she lied, heart pounding. At night, she returned to her cramped room and dialed old friends, only to hear excuses. "I'm swamped," they'd say, or "can't talk now." Loneliness settled like a stone in her chest. She began pouring her story into a battered journal, each page littered with tears and ink smudges. "I was foolish," she wrote. "I believed promises. I lost myself." One rainy afternoon, she ducked into the cafe for refuge. The barista handed her a free espresso. "On the house?" he said with a sympathetic glance. Alone at a corner table, Amina scrolled through news alerts on a borrowed tablet. Sterling Dynamics stock wavered. Shareholders murmured about governance. She froze on a headline, Board seeks ethics consultant, insider insight needed. Her breath caught. Could this be an olive branch? A chance to reclaim purpose? Kemi approached, noticing her stare. You okay? He asked. She closed the tablet, hiding the screen. Just tired, she murmured. Yet inside, a spark of determination flickered. She took a long sip of coffee, tasting bitter hope. That night, in the dim light of her room, she outlined a plan in her journal. Leverage my experience. Demand terms. Rebuild reputation. As the rain pattered against the window, Amina realized shame and isolation had tempered her resolve. She would no longer be defined by scandal. She closed the journal, its pages filled with both despair and burgeoning ambition. By dawn, she packed her worn laptop and suitcase, ready to act when opportunity knocked. The world had witnessed her fall. Soon they would see her rise. And as she stepped into the pale morning light, Amina carried with her the raw power of redemption. Rumors of Amina's disappearance spread through corporate circles like wildfire. Lunchroom gossip at competitor firms speculated she'd been quietly bought off. Others claimed she'd entered witness protection. Meanwhile, Sterling Dynamics pressed forward under Isabelle's polished leadership. Share prices rebounded. Investors lauded the transformative vision of the CEO's wife-turned-philanthropist. Amina learned of these developments through Hassan, a former PR contact who slipped her clandestine texts. Investors rattled. One message read, Board meeting next week on governance overhaul. Another, Isabelle signals need for external ethics review. Hassan warned of a window. They need you. But tread carefully. In her modest apartment, Amina wrestled with conflicting emotions. Would returning feel like capitulation? Or could she finally expose the rot beneath Isabelle's veneer? She drafted a blistering open letter, accusing Isabelle of sabotage and manipulation, but hesitated. A public tirade would play into the very spectacle she despised. Instead, Amina penned a private journal, laying bare every humiliation, the gala ambush, the forced apology, the legal threats. She mapped each betrayal, each regret, and every ember of determination that still glowed within her. Writing became catharsis, transforming ink into armor. That evening, under the hum of her single lamp, she sealed her journal. Its leather cover was scuffed, but inside lay the raw truth of her journey. She resolved that if she re-entered the corporate arena, it would be on her terms, and with the full arsenal of her insight into ethical breaches. She emailed Hassan, set up meeting with board. I'll propose ethics consultancy. His swift reply glowed on her screen, on it. As she powered down her laptop, a sense of purpose replaced the hollow ache that had haunted her since the scandal broke. Night deepened, and Amina closed her eyes with uncommon peace. The network's whispers had shifted, from derision to need. The same system that cast her aside now beckoned for her guidance. She understood the stakes. Her return could redeem or destroy her anew. But beneath fear lay resolve. Tomorrow the world would learn that the mistress could become its moral compass. 6 months after her public disgrace, Sterling Dynamics sat atop a knife edge. Institutional investors, uneasy over leadership upheaval, demanded transparency. An anonymous letter, leaked by insiders, had accused the company of ethical breaches tied to its nonprofit arm. Headlines roared, Sterling ethics in question, board seeks external review. In her sparse apartment, Amina felt a familiar flutter of anticipation. Hassan texted a time and location, the boardroom at headquarters, 8 o'clock sharp. She dressed in a crisp navy suit, her first professional attire since suspension, and caught a taxi at dawn. The city skyline glowed orange as she approached the gleaming Sterling Tower. Inside the lobby, security eyed her without recognition. She passed through scanners and elevators until the boardroom door loomed. Taking a deep breath, she entered to find the board assembled. Dawson the CFO, external auditors, and 3 stern-faced directors. At the head, Mr. Benson, the interim chair, gestured to an empty seat. Amina settled in, placing her jacket on the backrest. An awkward silence fell. The board's skepticism was palpable. Benson opened a dossier. Ms. Okoye, he began, voice measured. Thank you for accepting. We believe your first-hand experience with our crisis, both as participant and victim, positions you uniquely to advise on ethical reform. She nodded, heart steady. I appreciate the opportunity. She clicked open her laptop and projected a slide deck she had prepared. Transparency, accountability, and survivor support. Over the next hour she outlined a tiered plan, mandatory ethics training, third-party audits, and a confidential reporting hotline. She cited case studies, including her own ordeal, illustrating how unchecked power created fertile ground for abuse. At the conclusion, the room remained silent. Then Dawson spoke. "Your recommendations are thorough. But some costs are significant." Amina met his gaze. "Integrity demands investment. Without trust, Sterling's future is uncertain." Another director frowned. "How can we ensure these measures endure under changing leadership?" She replied, "Establish an independent ethics committee with rotating external members. No single individual, no matter how prominent, should wield unchecked authority." Benson closed his dossier. "We will deliberate." He looked around. "Your insights have been invaluable." The board members exchanged glances, an unspoken consensus forming. As the meeting adjourned, Benson signaled his gratitude. "Thank you, Ms. Okoye. We'll be in touch." Amina gathered her things, sensing a shift. Exiting the room, she paused in the corridor. Her reflection in the glass mirrored resilience. The consequences of her scandal had evolved into a catalyst for reform. She stepped away, confident she had shaped Sterling's destiny, and her own. Stepping into Sterling Dynamics headquarters felt surreal. The lobby's grandeur, so familiar yet distant, stirred memories of triumph and betrayal. Amina's heels clicked on marble as she approached the boardroom, where she would implement her reform plan. The elevator doors parted, revealing directors already seated around the table. She took her place at the end, surrounded by attentive faces. Dawson nodded as she connected her presentation. For the next 90 minutes, she guided the discussion, fine-tuning protocols, specifying timelines, and delegating responsibilities. Questions arose, but she answered each with clarity and authority. With every slide, she reclaimed pieces of her reputation. As the meeting concluded, applause broke the silence. Directors exchanged appreciative smiles. A door opened quietly behind her, and Isabelle Sterling entered. Amina froze, memories of public ambush flooding back. Isabelle's poise was unshaken. She extended a hand. "Thank you for helping Sterling recover its soul," she said, voice warm yet inscrutable. Amina hesitated, then took the hand. Their grip was firm, a silent pact. Reporters poised outside awaited confirmation. Isabelle offered a brief smile and departed as discreetly as she arrived. Amina exhaled, courage surging through her veins. Later that evening she emerged into the city's neon glow. News feeds lit up with headlines: "Former marketing head catalyzes ethics overhaul," "Sterling revival," "Amina Okoye's triumph." Notifications buzzed, congratulatory messages replacing scornful memes. She paused under a street lamp, gazing at her reflection in a taxi window, no longer a frightened pawn but a strategist and survivor. Her phone chimed. It was Tund. "Well done." She typed back, "We did it." In that text lay years of struggle, betrayal, and resilience distilled into two simple words. As she walked home, the midnight air felt invigorating. The streets, once indifferent, seemed to hum with possibility. Amina realized she had flown from disgrace to influence, charting her own course. The world that had mocked her now looked to her guidance. She smiled, knowing the journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. Morning light filtered through Amina's apartment window as she reviewed the latest board minutes. Sterling Dynamics had formally approved her ethics overhaul, and Tesco Governance, an international watchdog, planned to feature the company's turnaround in next month's journal. The tide had turned. A soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Dawson and two board members, carrying an official binder stamped "Internal Audit Findings." They entered respectfully. "Ms. Okoye," Dawson said, "we promised full transparency. We've discovered evidence of systematic data manipulation, emails, recordings, traced to Isabelle's nonprofit. We believe she orchestrated the campaign against you." Amina's pulse quickened. "I suspected as much," she said, steeling herself. "Board has convened a special session today," another director added. "We seek your testimony. Your journal entries and Tund's logs will be central." Amina stood, binder in hand. "I'm ready." She led them to her small desk, where she produced her leather-bound journal and a copy of the USB drive metadata. As they reviewed each entry, her reflections, the technical logs, Isabelle's facade cracked under factual scrutiny. By afternoon, the board issued a statement: "Isabelle Sterling resigns from all roles, internal investigation ongoing." News flashes heralded the downfall of Sterling's widow and nonprofit head. Social media shifted, lauding Amina's courage. Truth prevails. Mistress turned hero. Hours later, Amina sat before a mirror, removing her blazer. Her reflection was calm, unburdened. She had faced shame, betrayal, and humiliation, and emerged vindicated. The final reckoning had resolved not only corporate misconduct but also her personal catharsis. That evening, she stood at the rooftop terrace of her modest apartment building, city lights glittering below. She closed her eyes, breathing in the crisp air. Tomorrow she would draft a memoir, her voice no longer silenced by scandal. Tonight she allowed herself a quiet smile. In the distance, the Sterling Tower stood dark, once a symbol of power and deceit, now eclipsed by the new dawn of accountability. Amina had rewritten her ending. Her journey had come full circle, from pawn to architect of truth. And as the stars emerged overhead, she whispered into the night, "This is just the beginning." Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe, and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.